Hi, my name is Phil. Talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss another one of the myriad promises made by Boris Johnson during the general election campaign that he has already broken. This time, the insistence that we will not be lowering our food standards and the specific promise about not allowing chlorinated chicken into the UK. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, with Boris Johnson, his breaches of promise, which happen all the time, of course, to the nation always seem to come in three parts. So the first part is where he actually makes the promise, and those of us who pay close attention to British politics will know his line, or almost always know his line. And I don't mean the usual thing about, oh yeah, I can tell he's lying because his mouth's moving. No, because some of the things he says he actually intends. Whether he can deliver on them is another matter, but he does genuinely intend them. But it's usually straightforward to see which promises he genuinely intends and which he does not. So it was obvious that when he promised to preserve food standards that he was lying, because the US insists that we can't in order to get their trade deal. And it was very, very clear that Boris Johnson did absolutely, genuinely want the US trade deal that is being proposed by President Trump. The second stage is when legislation is pushed through Parliament to lay the groundwork for breaking his promise. So the usual thing can be said, I could say, well, he doesn't intend to keep this promise because it would contradict this situation, and that's the thing he really wants. And someone else go, no, he promised. So then what happens is you go, okay, so now he's enacted legislation that allows him to do this thing that I said he always wanted to do, and that's what has happened. So he broke, for example, a number of election promises when he changed the withdrawal agreement bill in January. As a quick example, he broke some promises straight away. Now, last month, the government made changes to the agriculture bill. Some MPs were keen to make sure that the changes did not lower our food standards, and so they sought to amend the bill with a guarantee that this would not happen. So it would be set into law that this couldn't happen. The government whipped their MPs to vote against it. Now, some Tory MPs, most notably in agriculture constituencies, voted against it because it would completely knacker British farming apart from anything else. But the point is that the legislation has now been passed by the government, which removes guarantees against foods such as chlorinated chicken entering the country. So that's the second phase. You can say, well, they've now enacted legislation for it. But then some people go, oh, just because they've enacted the legislation doesn't mean to say you have to do this. No, that's quite true. They don't have to do this. So then the first stage, and the third and final stage, is when Boris Johnson then no longer makes those promises. So he said that we're going to get a deal with the US, we're going to get this US trade deal, but we're not going to lower food standards. To which you go, well, but the US trade deal demands that we do lower food standards. No, it's fine. So then they pass legislation that allows him to lower food standards. And you go, okay. But he still promises not to lower food standards. Then he comes to the point where he doesn't promise that anymore. Now, in this case, as I say, ministers have stopped saying that food standards will not be lowered. And when asked specifically about chlorinated chicken, it's tumbleweed time. Because, very recently ministers were quite happy. They went through various stages. They first of all said, no, of course we're not going to be allowing chlorinated chicken into the country. Then they went, well, we've got no plans to introduce chlorinated chicken. We have no plans is what government ministers say when they absolutely do have plans, but they don't want to say so just yet. Because if you say we're definitely not going to do this thing, people can come back and say, well, you said you definitely wouldn't do this thing. Whereas if you say we have no plans to do this thing, you can just say, well, we didn't at the time, but now we changed our mind. And that's where we are now. Because Boris Johnson was specifically asked about the chlorinated chicken and he wouldn't deny the reports that, yes, this is now going to be allowed. And if you won't deny those reports when they're put to you, then you're basically agreeing with them. They're no longer saying that we're not going to be allowing it. And the timing is quite interesting for me because I'd have thought they'd have carried on lying about this for some time. You would think that when negotiations are taking place in secret, as they are for the US trade deal, you would keep unpopular details like this under wraps for as long as possible. You would just deny them for as long as possible. This is coming now. They're already at the point where they now won't deny it. Makes me wonder if Boris Johnson is going to fold completely and just sign whatever the US put in front of him in order to get the deal agreed this year. Because with Boris Johnson getting battered over his response to the pandemic, and with no real trade deals possible for years, of course not, you can't negotiate trade deals, in as short a time as this. It may well be that the Prime Minister feels that he has to come up with something that he can sell as an achievement before the year is out. Because that's going to be quite crucial. There's going to come a point where we're at the end of the year. It'll be an anniversary since he got his stonking majority in the Commons. And the opposition will be basically saying, what have you actually achieved in this year? He won't be able to say how brilliantly he's done in terms of the pandemic response. He can't really do that now too credibly. In another half a year time, no chance at all. He won't have any trade deals in the bag. He won't have his EU trade deal. He won't have anything to show for this whole year with an 80-strong majority. So I think he feels he needs this. And the only way he'll get it is just to sign whatever the US put in front of him. So I think that's what he's going to do. And, and I think because there is going to be a lot of pressure on him from within his own party. I've said before, I think Boris Johnson is probably safe for this year. But the Conservatives cannot allow him to lead them into another general election or they will lose. Now, it might even be that they can't afford to keep him for too much longer, even after this year, because it's not just a matter of damage to the party that they'll be worried about. The fact is at the moment that Boris Johnson is not just making his party look bad, he's making Keir Starmer and Labour look good in the public eye. It takes a long time to get the public to shift their opinions, but they are shifting those opinions. The trend is definite where it's going to. And once you let the genie out the bottle, it is a beggar to put back. Because even if they get rid of Boris Johnson, and get a new leader, the Conservatives may get a bit of a boost from that. But if they've already left him in place long enough to make Keir Starmer look really, really good, it's a hell of a climb back from that. So, yeah, I'm going to take this as an early sign that Johnson wants his deal agreed, in principle at least, this year, so that he can go to the public and say, I've got this deal, it's done, we're just going to deal with the details now. He knows he can sell it as a great deal, absolutely, even if it's terrible, which of course it will be for us, great for America. And it's one of those things that people will buy because they will never read the deal or listen to what independent experts say about it. And any opposition from other politicians will just make it look like party politics. Oh, well, of course they're going to say it's a bad deal because they don't want to give us any credit for anything great we've done for this country. You know the thing. Now, just finally, it is at this point probably worth pointing out what opposition could there be to prevent this deal going through if Boris Johnson is just determined to sign away, our lives. The first is, I don't think we can rely on opposition parties in the UK. They do not have the numbers to block anything, even if they act with unity. Second, there are plenty of Tory MPs in constituencies that would be economically shagged by the proposed trade deal. Some of them will certainly rebel, but it remains to be seen if enough will. There was certainly not enough opposition to the government's changes to the agriculture bill to suggest that we can hope for anyone to sink this deal from those benches. So then you say, so we probably haven't got any opposition to this in this country. So then third, the US Congress have said that they will block any trade deal with the UK if we are not considered to be in full compliance with the Good Friday Agreement. And a lot of people are taking that as read, well, if you don't get a deal with the EU and you leave with a hard Brexit, you don't extend the transition period, then you are going to see some trouble in Ireland. There it is, Congress won't allow it. I'm not sure it's as simple as that. It does have the most scope, but I don't think it's straightforward. Powerful lobby groups in America want this trade deal. Now, the Irish lobby group is also very powerful, of course, but with a tug of war between the Irish lobby group, say, and the agriculture and pharmaceutical lobby groups and others as well, I think Democrats are likely to want a fudge rather than to take a principled stance. I don't really see them taking a principled stance. And I think if you look at the situation in America right now, you can sort of see that. Because the way Donald Trump has behaved at the moment is absolutely disgraceful, of course, but an awful lot of what he's done or allowed to happen could be blocked by the Democrats. It has to be said, they have an awful lot of political power to block the suppression of protests that are going on in America right now. I think they're quite happy to stand on the bylines and let Donald Trump take the flak for it and then benefit politically this November. And I would see a similar stance being taken over this. Now, the only other possibility would be to get the British public mood dead against the deal. So it'd be ridiculously unpopular to the point where, you know, Tory MP backbenchers would be bolstered towards rebelling against it. The problem with that is you'd probably need the popular right-wing media to get in on that, and I don't think they will. And it's also very difficult to turn the public mood against something when the talks are being held in secret at the moment. But there it is. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.